On September 3rd this year, Tiananmen Square in Beijing was not simply a place to hold a celebration. It turned into a giant military stage where China showed off a series of domestically produced weapons, from tanks, missiles, bombers, to light armored vehicles. What was special here? Almost all of the weapons on display were domestic products, instead of imported ones like in the previous period. So why did China emphasize the phrase domestic? Why was this parade considered by observers as a declaration of Beijing's new power on the global defense map? And are those weapons really as terrible as they are advertised? In this long article, we will analyze three aspects in depth: the reasons why China focuses on domestic weapons in the parade, details of the weapons on display, their strategic significance on the military map, the consequences and global messages that Beijing wants to send, as well as the long-term impacts. And of course, as always, I will add a little humor so that you do not see this as just a dry news story. Chapter 1. Why does China choose dominal weapons as the focus? Historical context and thirst for self-reliance. For decades, China has relied heavily on imported weapons, especially from Russia. The S-27, S-30 aircraft, or S-300 air defense missile technology used to be the backbone of the country's military, but gradually, Beijing realized, if we keep buying and copying, when will we become a real power? That is why over the past 2 decades, China has promoted the policy of self-research, self-production. And this parade is a grand graduation, showing the world that we no longer just know how to copy, but can truly innovate and master military technology. Domestic message. For the Chinese people, seeing cannons, tanks, and fighters all labeled "Made in China" is like being given more confidence. It is like when you go to buy a phone and see a domestic brand competing on par with iPhone or Samsung. Patriotism naturally soars. Foreign message. For other countries, especially the US, Japan, India, and Southeast Asian countries, this performance is an affirmation. We can take care of ourselves, produce ourselves, and upgrade ourselves without depending on others. And when we are self-reliant, you have to recalculate how to deal with it. A humorous example: Domestic Goods Festival. If we compare it for fun, this parade is no different than a high-quality Vietnamese goods fair, except that it is the Chinese version, and instead of pots and pans, they display ballistic missiles and stealth fighters. Chapter 2. Domestic Weapons. Beijing's Muscle Show. 1. DF-41 ballistic missile. Range about 12,000 to 15,000 kilometers. Characteristics: carries multiple independent nuclear warheads, meaning puts almost the entire US territory in sight. Defense map illustration: if the DF-41 launcher is placed in Inner Mongolia, the flight path can cross the North Pole and fall to New York in less than 30 minutes. 2. J-20 stealth fighter. Known as the Chinese version of Raptor. Strengths: hard to detect radar, long-range air-to-air missile PL-15. Strategy: control of airspace in the East Sea and East China Sea, challenging the superiority of the US and Japanese F-35. 3. Type 99A tank. Capabilities: equipped with the 125mm smoothbore gun, modern fire control system. Comparison: although not as good as the US Abrams M1A2, it is strong enough to overwhelm the region. 4. H-6K bomber. Origin: improved from the Soviet Tu-16. Difference: can carry long-range cruise missiles CJ-10, enough to reach Guam. 5. HQ-9B air defense system. Copy upgraded from Russia's S-300, but now claimed by China as its own. Role: protect major cities, strategic bases, especially on the eastern coast. Humorous connection: military supercar. If ordinary people dream of driving a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, then at the parade, the supercar is a Type 99A tank or a DF-41 launcher. The only difference: instead of accelerating on the highway, they accelerate at the enemy. Chapter 3. Consequences and global message. 1. To the US and the West. Beijing wants to say, you no longer have a monopoly on military technology. We have our own weapons, and we can deter anyone. 2. To the Asia-Pacific region. To Japan, a warning about the Senkaku or Diaoyu dispute. For India, a reminder about the Himalayan border. For Southeast Asia, signals that China can control the South China Sea with hard power. 3. Long-term impact. Military autonomy reduces dependence on Russia. Arms export create a large additional source of revenue, as many countries are looking to buy cheaper weapons from the West. Superpower status contributes to strengthening China's image as a global power. 4. Humorous connection, showing off muscles like a gym. The parade is when China flexes its muscles like young men in gymbies. The only difference, instead of abs, they show off nuclear warheads. Conclusion. The recent parade was not just an impressive display, but also a political, military, diplomatic statement for China. The appearance of domestic weapons means 3 things. Beijing has gone from dependence on weapons to self-reliance. China wants to strengthen national spirit and domestic support. The message sent abroad is clear: look at us, don't look down on us. However, the question is, are China's domestic weapons really effective in combat, or are they just shiny shells? The answer can only be verified if, and hopefully not, a major conflict occurs. And as usual, before closing, I would like to send a message to you, the loyal audience of History and War channel. If you find this analysis useful and interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that we have more motivation to continue bringing the most attractive, complete, and emotional historical and war stories.